The morning sun cut through the Georgia humidity as Staff Sergeant Rachel Morrison stepped out of her dusty pickup truck. Fort Benning sprawled before her like a small city made of concrete and purpose. She'd driven 15 hours straight from North Carolina, her belongings packed tight in the truck bed, her orders folded in the glove compartment. Rachel was 32 years old, lean and strong, with dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun. Her uniform was crisp despite the long drive. 12 years of service had taught her that first impressions mattered, especially for women in her line of work. She reported to the administrative building where a young corporal looked up from his computer screen. His eyes scanned her uniform, pausing on the patches and ribbons that told her story. Most soldiers could read those markers like a book. This corporal either couldn't or didn't care to. "You're the new hand-to-hand combat instructor?" he asked, not bothering to hide his surprise. "That's correct," Rachel replied evenly. He printed her building assignment and base map without another word. Rachel had seen that look before, the quiet skepticism. She'd stopped trying to prove herself with words years ago. Actions were the only currency that mattered. The combat training facility stood at the east end of the base, a massive warehouse-style building with padded floors and the permanent smell of sweat and rubber. Rachel found the office marked Senior Instructor and knocked twice. "Enter!" a voice barked. Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Webb sat behind a metal desk covered in training schedules and equipment requisitions. He was a bear of a man, 50 years old if he was a day, with silver threading through his high and tight haircut. When he looked up and saw Rachel, his expression shifted through several emotions before settling on professional courtesy. "Staff Sergeant Morrison reporting for duty, Gunny." Webb stood and shook her hand with a grip that tested her without being obvious about it. Rachel matched it. They both knew the game. "Your record is impressive," Webb said, gesturing for her to sit. "3 tours overseas, 2 combat action ribbons, certified instructor in 4 different martial arts disciplines. Marine Corps Martial Arts Program Black Belt." "Yes, Gunny. You know this is going to be a challenge." He leaned back in his chair. "We've never had a female lead instructor in this program. The men can be difficult." Rachel had heard versions of this speech before. "I can handle it, Gunny." "I'm sure you can." He pulled out a training roster. "You'll start Monday with Advanced Combat Course, Class 19B. 27 Marines, all male, all convinced they're God's gift to hand-to-hand combat. Half of them washed out of Special Forces selection and have something to prove. The other half are just mean." "Understood." Webb studied her for a long moment. "Morrison, I requested you specifically. I read about what you did in Kandahar. That wasn't just combat. That was teaching under fire, literally. You trained those Afghan women's unit that held the checkpoint for 3 days." Rachel kept her face neutral, but the memory flickered behind her eyes. The dust, the crack of gunfire, the fierce determination in those women's faces as she showed them how to survive. "I need someone who can actually teach, not just demonstrate," Webb continued. "But I won't lie to you. Some of these instructors have been here 10 years. They think they know everything. When they find out you're replacing Jackson as the advanced course lead, there's going to be noise. Why did Jackson leave? Medical retirement. Training accident messed up his knee permanently." Webb's jaw tightened. "Though between you and me, that accident happened because he was showing off, trying to prove he could still hang with the 20-year-olds. Rachel spent the rest of the day processing paperwork and touring the facility. The main training floor could hold 100 people easily. Smaller rooms branched off for specialized instruction. Heavy bags hung in rows. Practice weapons lined the walls, everything from knives to rifles configured for hand-to-hand drills. She found a small apartment off base that afternoon, a 1-bedroom place with basic furniture and a kitchen she'd probably never use. That night, she unpacked her few belongings, clothes, books, a photo of her parents, and a wooden box containing her father's dog tags. He'd been a Marine too, killed in Desert Storm when Rachel was 8 years old. She'd joined to honor him and stayed because she'd found her purpose. Saturday and Sunday passed in preparation. Rachel reviewed the training curriculum, updated her lesson plans, and ran 10 miles each morning to clear her head. She knew what was coming. She'd faced it at every new posting, every new assignment. Monday morning arrived cold and clear. Rachel dressed in her combat instructor uniform, black cargo pants, and a brown t-shirt with instructor stenciled across the back. She arrived at the facility before dawn. The other instructors trickled in as the sun rose. They nodded to her, professional but distant. Sergeant First Class Davis, a stocky man with scarred knuckles, looked her up and down like she was a recruit. "So you're Jackson's replacement," he said. "I am. Good luck with 19B. They ate the last 2 substitute instructors alive." Rachel smiled. "I'll keep that in mind." At 800 hours, 27 Marines filed into the training hall. They ranged in age from 20 to 35, all fit, all carrying themselves with the particular swagger that came from combat experience. They formed up in 3 ranks, talking among themselves, not yet aware that their world was about to change. Rachel walked to the front of the formation. The talking didn't stop. "Class 19B, she said, her voice cutting through the chatter. "Attention." The room fell silent. 27 pairs of eyes locked onto her, and Rachel saw the exact moment the realization hit them. Their new instructor wasn't who they expected. Rachel stood before the formation, feet shoulder-width apart, hands clasped behind her back. She'd learned long ago that confidence wasn't about size or volume. It was about presence, about the absolute certainty that you belonged exactly where you were standing. "My name is Staff Sergeant Rachel Morrison," she began. "I'm your new lead instructor for Advanced Combat Course 19B. For the next 8 weeks, you will learn advanced hand-to-hand combat techniques, weapons retention, multiple opponent scenarios, and ground fighting. You will be tested physically and mentally. Some of you will fail. Any questions?" A hand shot up in the back row. The Marine was tall, heavily muscled, with a face that suggested he'd never backed down from anything in his life. His name tape read, Hutchins. "Yes, Marine?" "Ma'am, no disrespect, but where's Instructor Jackson?" "Medical retirement," Rachel replied. "I'm his permanent replacement." Hutchins exchanged glances with the Marines around him. "Ma'am, Jackson was Special Forces for 6 years before he came here. He had real combat experience. We were expecting someone with that level of background." The challenge hung in the air like smoke. Rachel recognized it for what it was, a test disguised as a question. "I have 3 combat tours, 2 in Iraq and 1 in Afghanistan," Rachel said calmly. "I've been in 17 direct engagements. I hold a black belt in the Marine Corps Martial Arts Program and instructor certifications in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Krav Maga, boxing, and Muay Thai. I've trained over 500 Marines in combat techniques, including 43 who later saw direct combat and credited their training with saving their lives." "Is there something specific about my qualifications you'd like to discuss, Hutchins?" The big Marine's jaw tightened. "No, ma'am." "Anyone else?" Rachel's gaze swept the formation. Silence. "Outstanding. We begin with warm-up. 3 miles, full combat pace. Fall out to the track." The Marines moved, but Rachel could feel their resistance. They ran hard, probably hoping to prove something or test her. Rachel kept pace at the front, not breathing hard, not struggling. Running was the easy part. Back in the training hall, she put them through an hour of drills. Basic strikes, defensive moves, footwork. She moved through the ranks, correcting form, demonstrating techniques. Some of the Marines responded well, professional and focused. Others, particularly a group clustered around Hutchins, wore their skepticism like armor. During the water break, Rachel overheard the conversations. The Marines weren't being quiet about it. "Can't believe they gave us a female instructor," one muttered. "Probably some diversity checkbox nonsense," another responded. "Jackson could drop any of us in 2 seconds. Her? I could probably bench press her." Rachel ignored it. Words were just air unless you gave them power. She'd teach them the only way that mattered, by being better than they expected. But as the week progressed, the resistance calcified into something harder. During partner drills, some Marines would go easy on her when she demonstrated, treating her like she might break. Others would go unnecessarily hard, trying to prove a point. Hutchins became the unofficial ringleader of the skeptics. On Thursday, during a grappling demonstration, Hutchins volunteered to be Rachel's partner. He outweighed her by at least 80 pounds and had 6 inches of height on her. "We'll start with a basic armbar escape," Rachel explained to the class. "Hutchins is going to apply the hold, and I'll demonstrate the counter." Hutchins moved in, and Rachel felt immediately that he was using more pressure than necessary. His forearm pressed against her throat harder than required for a demonstration. It was another test, another challenge. Rachel executed the escape flawlessly, using his momentum and leverage against him. In 3 seconds, she'd reversed the position completely, and Hutchins was face down on the mat with Rachel controlling his arm. "The key is not strength," she said, addressing the class while maintaining the hold. "It's understanding body mechanics and leverage. Size doesn't matter if you know where the weak points are." She released Hutchins, who stood up red-faced. The other Marines watched with mixed reactions, some impressed, others clearly hoping Hutchins would do better. Friday afternoon, Gunnery Sergeant Webb called Rachel to his office. He looked tired. "I've been hearing things," he said. "Some of the 19B Marines are filing informal complaints." Rachel's stomach tightened, but she kept her voice steady. "What kind of complaints, Gunny?" "Nothing official yet, but they're saying you're too easy on them, that the training isn't as rigorous as it was under Jackson. Hutchins seems to be leading the charge." Webb rubbed his face. "Look, I know what this is really about. They're looking for any excuse because you're female, but we still have to address it." "I'm following the exact same curriculum Jackson used," Rachel said. "I have the lesson plans. The physical standards are identical." "I believe you. But perception matters in the military. If these Marines think they're not being properly trained, that's a problem, even if they're wrong." He sighed. "I'm going to observe your class next week. Not because I doubt you, but because I need to be able to shut this down with facts." Rachel left the office feeling the familiar weight of having to prove herself settle on her shoulders. It wasn't enough to be good. She had to be perfect. She had to be better than any male instructor would need to be. That weekend, she trained alone in the facility, working through techniques, pushing herself harder than she pushed the Marines. She thought about Kandahar, about teaching those Afghan women who had so much more to lose than pride. They'd learned because their lives depended on it. These Marines were playing politics. Monday morning, Webb sat in the observation area while Rachel ran the class through a grueling circuit of strikes, takedowns, and ground fighting. She pushed them harder than she had the previous week, calling out every mistake, demanding precision. Halfway through, during a water break, Hutchins approached her. 2 other Marines flanked him, witnesses to whatever he was about to say. "Staff Sergeant, the guys and I were talking," he started, his tone just shy of insubordinate. "We're concerned about the quality of instruction we're receiving." Rachel set down her water bottle. "Be specific, Hutchins." "Well, ma'am, Instructor Jackson used to spar with us regularly, full contact. Show us what real combat looked like." His eyes glinted with challenge. "We haven't seen anything like that from you." The trap was obvious. If she refused, they'd say she was afraid. If she accepted and lost, she'd lose all credibility. If she accepted and won, they could claim she got lucky or that they held back because she was female. But Rachel was tired of walking on eggshells. "You want full contact?" she asked quietly. "Yes, ma'am. We want to know that our instructor can actually do what she's teaching." Rachel looked up at the observation deck where Webb was watching. He gave her a barely perceptible nod. "Your call." "All right," Rachel said. "Clear the mats." Part 3. 27 against 1. The word spread through the training facility like wildfire. Within minutes, Marines from other classes clustered around the observation windows. The other instructors appeared in doorways, drawn by the electric tension in the air. Everyone could sense that something important was about to happen. Rachel stood in the center of the large training mat. Hutchins faced her, rolling his shoulders, cracking his knuckles. He'd removed his shirt, revealing a torso covered in tattoos and muscle. Around them, the other 26 Marines from 19B formed a loose circle. "Standard sparring rules," Rachel said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Strikes and takedowns allowed. Submission ends the match. No strikes to the groin or eyes. Tap out or verbal submission is immediate stop. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am," Hutchins replied, but his grin suggested he didn't think he'd need to tap out. They touched gloves. Rachel had fought bigger opponents her entire career. She'd learned early that speed and technique could overcome size, but only if you stayed smart and didn't let emotion cloud your judgment. Hutchins came in aggressive, trying to use his reach advantage with a jab-cross combination. Rachel slipped both punches, circling away from his power side. He followed, throwing a low kick that she checked with her shin. The impact would leave a bruise, but she didn't react. He tried to close the distance, probably planning to use his wrestling background. Rachel let him think he was succeeding, then exploded upward with a knee strike that caught him in the chest. Not hard enough to injure, but hard enough to drive him back. The watching Marines murmured. This wasn't what they'd expected. Hutchins' smile faded. He came in more carefully now, respecting her striking. They exchanged combinations, testing each other. Rachel could feel him trying to time her movements, looking for a pattern he could exploit. Then he shot in for a takedown, a beautiful double leg that should have put her on her back. But Rachel had seen it coming in the slight drop of his level. She sprawled perfectly, her hips driving back as her hands snaked around his neck. In 2 seconds, she'd reversed the position and had him in a guillotine choke. Hutchins tried to power out of it, but Rachel had the technique locked in tight. She could feel his carotid artery pulsing against her forearm. 5 more seconds, and he'd go unconscious. His hand slapped against her back. Tap out. Rachel released immediately and stepped back. Hutchins gasped, his face red, his ego redder. The training hall was silent. "Anyone else?" Rachel asked calmly. Another Marine stepped forward, Corporal Davis, smaller than Hutchins but with the wiry strength of a natural athlete. Rachel reset in the center of the mat. This match went differently. Davis was faster, more technical. He'd clearly trained in striking arts before joining the Marines. They went back and forth for nearly 2 minutes, a chess match of strikes and counters. Rachel caught him with a liver shot that buckled his knees, then took his back and applied a rear naked choke. He tapped. A third Marine stepped up, then a fourth. Rachel fought each one, methodically demonstrating the techniques she'd been teaching. Some matches lasted 30 seconds, others went for several minutes. Each time, she won. Not through brutality or by trying to hurt them, but through superior technique and years of experience. After the 7th match, Rachel's breathing was labored. Sweat soaked through her shirt. But when an 8th Marine stepped forward, she nodded and raised her hands again. By the 12th match, the watching crowd had grown quiet. This wasn't entertainment anymore. It was something else, something that made the experienced instructors exchange knowing glances. They'd seen enough combat to recognize what Rachel was doing. She was making a statement that couldn't be argued with or dismissed. Match 15 came and went, then 18. Rachel's muscles screamed. Her knuckles were scraped raw. A cut above her left eye leaked blood that she wiped away between matches. But she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Not yet. The 23rd Marine she faced was the youngest in the class. Barely 21 years old, Private First Class Torres. He looked uncertain as he stepped onto the mat. "Ma'am, you don't have to," he started. "I do," Rachel interrupted gently. "For all of you." They fought, and Rachel won, though it took longer than the earlier matches. Exhaustion was taking its toll. 24. 25, 26. Finally, only Hutchins remained. He hadn't moved from where he'd been standing after his loss, watching every single match. His expression had changed from smug challenge to something Rachel couldn't quite read. "We already went," he said quietly. "I know," Rachel replied, "but I'm going to fight all 27 of you, like I said, unless you're too tired." Something shifted in Hutchins's eyes. He stepped onto the mat. This time there was no showboating, no testing. They fought with mutual respect, two warriors who understood each other's capabilities. Hutchins was fresh while Rachel was running on fumes, but she'd learned long ago how to push past physical limits. The match lasted 4 minutes, an eternity in a fight. Hutchins finally managed to take her down, achieving top position in a grappling exchange. For a moment, it looked like he might win. Then Rachel executed a perfect bridge and roll, reversing their positions. She transitioned to mount, then to an armbar. Hutchins held out for 10 seconds before tapping. Rachel stood on shaking legs. The training hall swam in her vision. She'd been fighting for nearly 2 hours straight. Every muscle in her body screamed. Blood and sweat stung her eyes. The 27 Marines of Class 19B stood in formation without being told. As one, they came to attention and saluted. Rachel returned the salute, though her arm trembled with the effort. "Class dismissed," she managed to say. "We resume regular training tomorrow at 0800. The Marines filed out quietly, their earlier bravado completely gone. Rachel waited until they were gone, then sat down heavily on the mat. Her hands shook as adrenaline drained from her system. Gunnery Sergeant Webb appeared beside her with a first aid kit. He didn't say anything, just started cleaning the cut above her eye. "That was either the bravest or the stupidest thing I've ever seen," he finally said. "Had to be done, Gunny. 27 Marines, Morrison, back to back. I've been in this business for 30 years, and I've never seen anything like it." Rachel winced as he applied antiseptic. "Will it be enough?" Webb sat back on his heels. "To shut down the complaints? Yeah. To earn their respect? You'll find out tomorrow." That night, Rachel could barely move. Every muscle had stiffened. She took a hot shower that turned cold before she could bring herself to get out. In the mirror, she cataloged the damage. Bruised ribs, a spectacular black eye forming, scraped knuckles, and countless smaller bruises blooming across her arms and legs. She made herself eat something, though her stomach rebelled. Then she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she'd made the right choice. There were other ways she could have handled Hutchins' challenge, safer ways, political ways. But Rachel had never been good at politics. She thought about her father, about the stories her mother had told her. He'd been a grunt, a rifleman who'd never sought glory but had done his job with quiet competence. When Rachel had told her mother she was joining the Marines, her mother had cried, not from sadness but from understanding. Some people were built for this life. Tuesday morning, Rachel woke to pain that made Monday's soreness feel like a warm-up. She dressed slowly, every movement deliberate. The face in the mirror looked like it had been in a car accident. The black eye had fully developed overnight, a purple and blue masterpiece. Her split lip had swollen, but she'd made a promise to herself and to those 27 Marines. Regular training resumed at 800. Rachel arrived at the facility at 0630, giving herself extra time to warm up her protesting muscles. She found the training hall exactly as she'd left it the night before, except for one thing. Someone had cleaned all the mats and equipment. The blood spatters from her cut were gone. Everything was orderly and ready for the day. At 0755, Class 19B filed in. They formed up without the usual chatter. When Hutchins saw Rachel, something flickered across his face. Recognition or maybe respect. "Good morning, Marines," Rachel said. "Good morning, Staff Sergeant," they replied in unison, their voices crisp. The training that day was professional and focused. When Rachel demonstrated techniques, the Marines paid attention. When she corrected their form, they adjusted immediately. The change was remarkable. During a water break, Corporal Davis approached her. "Staff Sergeant, I wanted to apologize for yesterday, for putting you in that position." "Nothing to apologize for, Davis. You wanted to know if your instructor could fight. Now you know." "Yes, ma'am." He hesitated. "For what it's worth, I've trained with a lot of instructors. You're one of the best." The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm. Class 19B became the most dedicated group Rachel had ever taught. They arrived early, stayed late, and pushed themselves harder than she pushed them. The change in Hutchins was particularly notable. He became her unofficial assistant, helping newer Marines with techniques, setting an example for intensity and focus. But Rachel started noticing other things too. Whispered conversations that stopped when she approached, meetings between some of the other instructors that she wasn't invited to. Sergeant First Class Davis, the instructor who'd wished her luck on her first day, watching her with an expression she couldn't decipher. In the 6th week of the course, Gunnery Sergeant Webb called her to his office. His expression was grave. "We have a problem," he said without preamble. "There's been an accusation." Rachel's blood went cold. "What kind of accusation?" "Inappropriate conduct. Specifically that you showed favoritism toward certain Marines in 19B and created a hostile environment for others." Webb slid a formal complaint across his desk. "It's signed by 3 instructors, Davis, Martinez, and